Hey guys, and welcome back to another Off the Cuff. So today is going to be a quick one. Basically, it's just more about people capitulating to political group or sort of ideological ideas, ideological groups, and this one is to do with BLM. So you probably find cricket fairly boring. That's fine. Give it a chance because I think you'll find this one fairly interesting. So Quinton De Kock is a reasonably young South African cricketer, and there is a Cricket World Cup going on at the moment, and he has been involved. I only found out this morning because they were talking about how he was going through a very difficult period at the moment, and I was thinking, what could that be? Perhaps one of his parents has died, or I don't know, something pretty bad. And yeah, it turns out that he had just decided that he wasn't going to take the knee in the name of a political movement, BLM. So you have to bear in mind with Quinton, he was born December 1992. So he was born 2 years after apartheid had finished. And the reason that I bring that up is because some people will say that, and I disagree with this, but some people would say that, in South Africa, you must do what everyone else does. You cannot think freely unless you're thinking in a particular way, because, well, South Africa has had a bit of a shady past, and it has. Listen, let's not try and gloss over the pretty horrendous period of South African history, in certain regards. But, he was born after this finished. He has half black stepsisters. He has a black stepmother. He himself is mixed race, but he chose not to take a knee, and today we will go into why he made that decision, and a little bit about everything that surrounds that, what's brought us to this day, and what is really going on. So yeah, Quinton De Kock, he plays the position wicketkeeper, and he is also an opening batsman, so he is pivotal to a cricket team. He is very, very good. Most people would say he's probably top three. Well, he's definitely top three wicketkeeper batsman in the world. And he is the sort of player that you really don't want to leave out of your team unless you really have to. And that will become important when I lead you further down this tale of wonder and sorrow. Like I said before, born in December 92, so a year and a half before Nelson Mandela was elected to become the first black president of South Africa. And yeah, he's pretty much lived his whole life under the modern, the rainbow, what do they call it? The rainbow country. So he's lived his life under the new South Africa. Now, whether or not you think that certain aspects are better or worse, so some people think that the government is more corrupt now. So yeah, he's a very good player, like I said. That's kind of by the by at this point, but it does have a little bit of meaning. So we have the World Cup. It was supposed to be held in India. As far as I'm aware, they have kind of moved it to Dubai because of coronavirus and all the rest of it. And that led us to a game that South Africa were due to play against the West Indies. And essentially, the cricket board of South Africa had said, look, we're going to kneel for this. And a few players were like, well, look, I've read quite a lot into it. I know some people just think it's as simple as being against racism, but this is not that. So some sports have just said we're going to be against racism, and some sports have made the mistake of going in particular for a specific political group, which is BLM, self-avowed Marxist group, and also self-avowed anti-Western group. And so yeah, some of them chose not to do it, and that was in the first match. And then they said, well, next time you have to do it. So at this point, Quinton said, well, I'm not down with that. So he essentially stepped away. And then the cricket board of South Africa were like, well, we were gonna let him go anyway, blah, 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 blah. The captain of the team, Temba Bavuma himself, is a black gentleman. And he said they were never going to let him go. And it just needed to be talked over. And unfortunately, he did end up basically I suppose, bending the knee, proverbially. And this is what some people have had to say about that.
The sporting world has been divided over the true impact of the movement. A country like South Africa, where after the dark period of apartheid, white farmers are being killed routinely. The Indian expats are killed standing only for the Black Lives Matter appears to be a hollow movement that is simply aping a symbolic gesture from Western nations.
Now, some of you may be wondering, although I imagine not many, what could have led to cricket becoming like this? Well, it seems that most of everything is like this these days. I have no idea why people think it's okay to bring politics, or why people think it's okay to bring an anti-racism message that's sort of for one race, that's clearly kind of aimed at one race, and also to the sort of, I suppose you could say benefit of one race. It seems the wrong word, but we'll use it for the sake of not having a better one. I don't know why this is going on, but cricket itself was one of the first sports to try and make a comeback after COVID hit. And very early on, it became kind of evident. It was football, soccer, that first started doing the whole having Black Lives Matter written on the back of their shirts and, kneeling before every game. And this did not go down very well with the fans, because I think the fans had time during lockdown to read up on this and know that it's not as it first appears. Those of us that live in multicultural societies, we understand that racism has essentially been gone for 30 years. Definitely was not great in the 80s, but still you're talking tiny groups, behaving like they behaved. In terms of it being acceptable, geez, man, like my grandparents knew it wasn't acceptable to be racist. So this whole thing about coming out in 2020, 2021 and being like, hey guys, I've got an amazing idea. Let's not be racist, is kind of redundant, but it does make people money. And there is a very famous black gentleman from the West Indies, but he lives in the UK, called Michael Holding, one of my favourite people in cricket until he began talking about this. But as likeable as Mikey is when he's not talking about this crap, you could always kind of tell he had a chip on his shoulder. Like I remember there was a really bad umpiring decision in New Zealand, and he discussed it as if it was like a racist thing rather than just a bias to the home team thing, which is probably more likely what it was, but we'll never really know. So as I will let you listen to, Mikey, he delivered a message after having already written a book a few years ago, and that went down okay, but not brilliantly. And then for some reason, and I'm sure none of us can figure out why, Mikey decided that now, during this time of mass discontent, for very various reasons, and mass division, that this would be a fantastic time to to bring out another book. But I will let you listen to what Mikey said himself.
Well, as we know, and as I have found out, black people and people of color have done a lot of fantastic things that have been hidden because they want to portray this thing about white superiority, white supremacy. And if you show black people and people of color doing fantastic things, innovative things, discovering things, that is fighting against the narrative of white superiority. So it has been airbrushed out of history.
So this is just absurd. You kind of want to laugh, but then you realize how, the fact that this was going out on a mainstream TV show to a lot of people, and it's the sort of people you really don't want social messages going out to, like the sort of upper middle class people that will go to drinks parties and be like, oh yes, we need to get on this bandwagon quickly. Oh yes. So him saying that they're kind of pushing white supremacy, no one's pushing white supremacy, Mikey. You live in Newmarket. That's like an extremely nice part, of the UK. Very few bad things happen in Newmarket. And where Mikey lives, because I don't live that far away, let me tell you, nothing bad happens where Mikey lives. But yeah, the reason why all these historical figures, Mikey, happen to have been white is because we're in Europe. I understand that you are a West Indian who has moved to the UK because you clearly enjoy the UK and you have some work here and you like your racehorses, and that's fine. But up until 50 years ago, for thousands of years, 100% of the UK was white. So if we go back, 200 years, 250 years to Edward Jenner's time, yeah, Like, he's going to be white. There's nothing I can do about that. I understand people are trying to kind of airbrush things out of history, but that's why that is what it is, Mikey. Like, there's nothing we can do. And, I think to call that white superiority, to be like, yeah, this white dude that used to live in this massively white-dominated area of a white part of the world was white hundreds of years ago, that's white supremacy. I feel like that's beyond ignorant and quite perturbing.
So that is why I want to teach people about these things. You see what a young person growing up, if they don't see people like them doing great things, they can aspire to it and say, okay, if he can do it, I can do it.
But, I had posters of black sportsmen on my wall as a kid 25 years ago. So maybe like sports, I kind of agree. I mean, obviously there has to be a first person in every race and every group and whatever. But I mean, I guess like if you're that fickle that you need to be inspired by somebody that looks or behaves or, like exactly like you, for you to think that you can do that, that's fine. Like, that's fine. But we've had tons of black sportsmen for decades. So maybe it's time to inspire young black guys to go into positions that aren't like the glory ones, like where you get paid a fortune and your face is everywhere, like everybody else. Like, maybe inspire them to be engineers and, other things. Like, I definitely don't think sports is the one place where we've been lacking black role models, or, like black heroes. But maybe I'm wrong.
You say in the book, it's not a book of complaints, it's a book of facts. When you look into the facts, did even some of them surprise you?
Definitely. I was surprised by a lot of things. We are in the COVID period right now, pandemic, serious problems going on. I was taught that an English doctor is the one who was the father of inoculations, immunizations. That's rubbish. The first person to bring immunization and inoculations to this part of the world, the Western world, was a black man, a slave from Africa, long before the English doctor, long years before the English.
Again, this is completely false. It gives me no pleasure to say it's completely false. I'm just trying to give people the facts. So we have this anecdote about Onesimus, which was 1721, where he was like, smear this pus on your wound and it will sort everything out, which is obviously something that has been going on for a while. That's what Mike is talking about. And again, it was Edward Jenner, the guy that actually explained why that happens and how we can use it to cure millions, hundreds of millions of people. And then before that, like I say, it's been documented in the 1600s in England, in the 1300s in England, in the 1100s in England, and then all the way back hundreds of years before that in Persia, in Rome, even in China. Well, I shouldn't say even in China, in India, thousands of years ago. In fact, we should probably be giving more credit to everyone. But there we go.
Doctor, but he was never taught, because you can't say things like that and expect people to say, okay, the white man is dominant, the white man is superior.
Doesn't that make like everyone else really uncomfortable? Like, it makes me super uncomfortable that there's a dude who's chosen to move to essentially my town from another really nice country, and he refers to people like me, or maybe not like me, because I've never done anything as good as Edward Jenner. That Edward Jenner. But he refers to us as the white man. The white man this, the white man that. Imagine if I was like, the black man is something at sports, or the black man is something in crime, or the black man is something in literary reading, or, the black man there. Like, that sounds really strange. The white man. No one understands that the white man has done this. Like, I don't know. That just feels really kind of like he has a chip on his shoulder.
Because you don't want to show what black people have done that has been great. This man goes back, Boston. If you remember Boston and smallpox. Smallpox was...
And can we just be honest and recognize the fact that Mikey has clearly been kind of brainwashed by people from America? Because the stuff he's talking about, trust me, as an Englishman. No one in England would know anything about anything to do with Boston. No one in England. When he's like, you know that the pandemic? No, like nobody would know that. So this is an American thing, whether he has family that have been telling him this or whether it's social media. Why is he telling people in England stuff about this? There's another thing like this where he's really angry about the George Floyd thing. I can understand that, but what is this to do with people in England, Mikey? It's chalk and cheese. And I actually think it's quite racist to kind of just be like, well, you guys look similar to those people in America of Polish and Danish and Swedish and German descent. So I'm going to rant at you because one of them like did something wrong to someone that looked similar to me, but there was probably ancestors from nowhere near where mine were from. This is like child level thinking. You know what? Whatever.
Destroying Boston. He is the one who went to his master. Obviously, he's a slave, he has an owner. He went to his owner, his master, and said, listen, in Africa, this is what we do. We take some of the pus from the wound of a sick person, we cut the skin of a healthy person, and just insert a little bit of that pus, so that that person then builds immunity to what was entered into his body. Of course, him being a slave, they said, oh, what would a slave know? Eventually, one person said, you know what, I'm losing so many people, let me try this. And it worked. But of course, he got no credit. This little black man from Africa, how can he know things like this? So they just ignored it, that it was never written into history. Michael Johnson talks about his father teaching him as a young man, a young black man, what to do and what not to do if he's stopped by the police. And then he himself now having to teach his son. And one day he sat down to himself and he said, why should I be doing this?
Because we all do it. Everybody does it, Mikey. This is what really frustrates me. My dad told me how to act with police numerous times. Anybody with a half-decent dad, their dad is going to say to them, look, a policeman can ruin your life. And he can certainly ruin it on the short term. So, listen, you have to treat them with respect because as with anything in life, some people are knobs and some people aren't. And some people are somewhere in between. So rather than risk it, you're polite and you allow them to be dominant. Like, who cares? So, you know, you act like a little bitch for a few seconds. Big deal. Yes, sir. No, sir. Free bag's full. Hope everything's cool and, you know, hope that you get out of there with nothing too bad happening, etc., etc. Everybody has to do that, Mikey. The problem, in my opinion, is people either not growing up with a dad, which is not their fault, it's their dad's fault, or growing up with a dad that just didn't give them that information. But in my opinion, this how to interact with a policeman, especially if you live like in a city where you're going to have a lot more police, it's up there with the birds and the bees and, you know, how to look after your money and, you know, so on and so forth. This is not like a black-only thing that parents have to speak to their kids about police. For goodness sake, I mean, there's a lot of places in America where the police are like 90% black. Like in Baltimore. Excuse me. In Baltimore, I think pretty much everybody, all of the higher-ups are black. Like the commissioner, the governor, or whoever, all of the chiefs, everyone's black there. It's just part of life now.
Why should I be telling my son he has to behave differently from a white kid on the street? This is rubbish. But of course, that is the life that they live in that society. And I didn't live that life.
So why are you the guy writing the book on how to live that life then, Mikey? Why are you the person that's telling us how that life is lived?
Which I'm grateful for.
Conversations are happening, and in America, for example, Nike, Apple are starting to put some big dollars into projects. Bank of America.
Yeah.
So
Oh, we all know that when big corporations put money into something, that's definitely the correct thing to do morally, don't we, Mikey? I mean, if Bank of America and Nike, if they're getting involved, definitely no sort of undercover marketing campaign. That's definitely just because, you know, they fancy throwing away a few $1 billion, isn't it, Mikey?
I'm very disappointed with some of the things that I hear people saying, but it doesn't surprise me. I'm disappointed but not surprised. When you hear people start talking about BLM is Marxist, some of the people are talking about BLM being Marxist, they don't even know who Karl Marx is or what he stood for.
Yeah, so that's kind of hilarious. So he's kind of saying that he's annoyed that people are not choosing to support this political group because it could be political. And then he follows that up by saying that we should read up, essentially by hinting that, people don't even know who the person behind this political movement is. Yeah, nice one, Mikey. Why to put your foot in your mouth?
But they tell you that because they're trying to pull down the movement of Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, because they know what it really is, Mikey. What? Obviously they don't like it, so they don't want it to be around. But you're confusing that with people either being racism or not wanting to stop racism, and that's not true at all. Everybody I know that is not a huge fan of this thing, it's solely, well, I guess there's a couple of reasons. One, because it's just embarrassing to think that it's a breath of fresh air that someone shouldn't be racist or that black lives suddenly matter. Like, most people have always thought that. And secondly, yes, like, they have admitted that they are Marxists, and a lot of people understand, Mikey, how rare freedom, like relative freedom, is in the world, and how most of us take it for granted, and that we just assume that if we went to a much more authoritarian politic, that somehow our freedom would continue, which, clearly it wouldn't and never has. This very kind of base level stuff, I know he's just trying to sell his book here in this interview, but he could have found a way of trying to come across a little bit less sort of grating.
And I'm never ever going to talk about any political movement. I have no idea who started BLM political movement or who started the website. I care about the 3 words: Black Lives Matter. And I'm going to go further with this England team. What they are doing now about this moment of unity, that is not supporting Black Lives Matter. Don't tell me that's supporting Black Lives Matter, because what you're doing there is, when I say Black Lives Matter, you're telling me all lives matter.
The sporting world has been divided over the true impact of the movement. A country like South Africa, where after the dark period of apartheid, white farmers are being killed routinely. The Indian expats are killed standing only for the Black Lives Matter, appears to be a hollow movement that is simply aping a symbolic gesture from Western nations.
Quinton De Kock releasing a statement following his withdrawal from the Proteas team to play with the West Indies at the T20 World Cup on Tuesday. The star batsman making the decision after CSA's directive to the Proteas players to take the knee in support of the Black Lives Matter movement.
He was essentially withdrawing from the match against the West Indies in Abu Dhabi on Tuesday, and this and it was widely accepted as the governing body CSA having told the team on the morning of the game that they will have to take the knee with the rest of the teams that at the World Cup, because it's I've said before, it's a global gesture that has been widely regarded as in support of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yes.
So the issue was that on Saturday, when they played Australia, it looked like there was no uniformity in the team. Well, there wasn't, because there were players who took the knee, others didn't, and the mostly players who didn't take the knee happened to be white players.
Sure.
They didn't take the knee, and it was quite embarrassing for Cricket South Africa, for the team. I would imagine the members of the team who took the knee, that some of their teammates didn't. It raised questions about the spirit in the team itself. How do you go and win the World Cup and come back and celebrate with South Africans, a country predominantly black?
And Themba Bavuma having to explain this in front of
captain. Yes, the captain of the team having to explain what happened.
Okay, so there you go, guys. Unfortunately, it's another case of someone bending the knee to bend the knee. It seems like in South Africa, or at least according to Cricket South Africa and the South African media, that if you are not on board with a particular political ideology, then you're racist. It's actually quite a clever thing to do, to kind of link, to link your politics to a race, because then, if people are against that, most people would say that being racist is we're taught that it's one of the worst things to be. So if you want to get your politics into a country, link it to race, because, well, no one's going to stand against that. I just wonder what it leads to, you know, because, you know, what's the next ideology going to be linked to, you know, if we ever end up, you know, if enough people educate themselves to move past this. But in terms of what he said, I'll leave it up there for a bit, but he essentially said what we all knew, which was he's read into it, he's followed it, and despite the fact that he comes from a family that is incredibly diverse, and despite the fact that he himself is of a mixed race heritage, that he just doesn't believe in the politics that are behind you know, this message that, you know, that in itself Black Lives Matter is just common sense, you know, but he just knows that that is not all the truth. The truth is the actual Marxist ideology behind it, and he doesn't agree with that. So he was having the balls to not kneel, but he has now been punished. But obviously they need him because he's arguably their best player. And that is one last thing that I'll mention. This is a country where you, as a captain, you're forced to have at least 6 black people or 6 non-white people in a team. So a lot of people wonder, like, how come New Zealand end up with some really good South African cricketers, and England, and, you know, even Australia with Marnus Labuschagne? Well, sometimes they just move there, like with Marnus, and then other times they leave because they know that they have a better chance elsewhere. You know, because in their country, you literally stand a better chance of getting into a team if you're black than if you're white. Crazy times. Anyway, so there you go. Sorry it dragged on for a bit. I just thought some of you might be interested in that one. And thanks for watching, and I will see you again soon.
Winston stopped writing, partly because he was suffering from cramp. He did not know what had made him pour out this stream of rubbish